Hey, what's up guys? It's Nick Davenport here, aka Mr. Mental Muscle. Today we're going to talk about type A personality theory. Now, the interesting about type A theory, as you've seen me talk about other personality theories, such as trait theory, that even though it says type, it actually falls more on the trait side of things. And when we talk about traits, that's a continuum or a spectrum of traits. And that's a perfect example because as you see, there's a type A, there's also a type B. So we're gonna get more on the psychological perspective of what this all means, because it originally was created by two cardiologists who noticed that their patients were more antsy, anxious, ready to jump out their seat. And they actually literally saw that their seats were getting damaged quickly in a worn in a weird way. And this started making them see like, what's really going on here? And that's where it started from. Now we're going to take it to the more psychological, mental level to see how this can affect how we actually perform and how that can help us or even detract from us. Now let's go through the different types of trait that fall on this spectrum. So on type A side, type A personality people tend to be very, very competitive. This means winning by any means necessary. It doesn't necessarily mean cheating or going to those extremes, even though that can happen. It's more so saying we need to get the job done. It doesn't matter what has to be done, whatever task or hurdle or obstacle that's in front of us, we're getting it done, we're gonna win. Now, this goes to the second part where you see goals are not necessarily the end all be all to get a reward. Now, you can get enjoyment from fulfilling your goals, but that's not why you're doing it. It's not necessarily to feel that, hey, I got it, I wanna celebrate, get a reward. It's more so, this needs to get done. This is the task at hand. Because when you face roadblocks, hurdles, hindrances, there's gonna be things that you're not gonna wanna do. And a type A personality person is gonna be able to ignore that because they know they're in it for a bigger purpose. Now, this can lead to even a greater hindrance that people can see as a downfall, but can actually be uplifting depending on what you're trying to do. Now, you see life imbalances. Some people say all work and no play. And obviously you do need some kind of outlet. It's not to say that you have to work all the time, but it's gonna be more work than play. And this is what's needed because there's gonna be people who have to be that outlier to get things done. Now, a lot of people get criticized, especially in modern times, because we're faced with more, leisure time and activities like watching TV, Netflix, things of that nature. So we have that privilege. But if you look back to ancient times, like I always say, there's no more saber-toothed tigers, that wasn't always a capability. Downtime wasn't the same back then because you always had to be looking over your shoulder. So a type A personality type person is going to be beneficial in those type of situations because they're going to do what needs to be done regardless what's on their plate. Now, there's a sense of urgency, meaning they're working against the clock, and that's what my shirt says as you see type A. Working against the clock means there's always something that needs to be done. It means we're gonna book things very close together, one client after another, one task after another, even getting to the point where we may be multitasking, eating lunch while driving to another appointment, going to the appointment, coming back, working on something on a voice memo so you can multitask and take care of numerous things at once. And it seems very tedious, going back to that life imbalance, but at the same time, it allows you to get more things done. Now, this can lead to being very critical of oneself because since they want to be winners, they want to be competitive, they want to take on every task in front of them, they're going to have a level of criticism that they impose on themselves. They're going to take things a little more harshly when it doesn't work out. Failure is not necessarily a downfall, but it definitely is taken into consideration of why is this happening? Is it a reflection of the lack of effort? So this is something that can be detrimental in a sense, depending on how deeply it affects them. Because everyone gets affected when things don't go their way, but it depends on how much you let that affect you. So being critical of yourself is necessary because there is times where you're gonna mess up. There is times when you didn't give it your all. You gotta be able to analyze and say, how can I improve? But getting too deep into it can backfire. Now, the last part on this side, we see they're easily aroused to anger or maybe show hostility. Now, this doesn't mean they're necessarily walking around just punching everybody in the face. It's more so saying that things can get on their nerves because once again, if you're trying to get a goal done, you're trying to achieve a task, you don't want these little nonsense things getting in your way. So to the general public, it might come off as they're quote unquote assholes because they take things more harshly like, hey, why are you doing this? Can you please stop? Or we need to pick this up. And people can take that as condescending, but in actuality, this person's just trying, once again, to beat the clock, get things done, and be the best. Now, let's look at the other side of that spectrum, type B personality. Now, these people are not necessarily the polar opposites, but they're definitely different. So a type B personality is more so non-competitive, meaning they're doing things more so for the, not necessarily leisure, but wanting to get the reward. They enjoy doing the goal to say, hey, I did this, this is what I received, I got an extrinsic motivation giving me power to do this. So it's not very contingent on their success, it's more so the fact that they just did it and got it done. Now, this doesn't mean they can't achieve things or be successful, it's just that they're more so gonna leave it to chance. They're gonna allow it to be more so, this is what's happening, just go with the flow type of feelings. Now, they're more imaginative and creative. And it's not saying that a type A person can't be creative. You definitely can. That's why it's a spectrum. You can have traits on both sides, but there's definitely gonna be a dominant side. And that dominant side is kind of like, catching a tennis ball. One of my mentors, they use an example of, I was throw a tennis ball at you real quickly, your dominant hand's gonna jump up and try to catch it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't catch it with your opposite hand, but you're usually gonna tend to favor the stronger one. So if you're more type A, you can still do these things, you can still dial it down, you can still be creative and enjoy the fruits of your labor, but you're probably gonna be on this side more often and vice versa. Now, they're more tolerant than others. So like we said with type A, they're easy to arouse to anger, mostly because they're trying to get the job done. They need to make things happen. Type B, on the other hand, they're fine with, oh, you didn't get it done? That's all right, we'll get to it later. We'll just go with the flow and whatever happens, happens. While you can still, like I said, accomplish things, this is not gonna be more productive if you look at the grand scheme of things. And that's why I asked at the end, who do you want on your team? Because we're talking about performance, how does it affect us when we go, whether it's work, school, sport, love, whatever it is, what's gonna be more beneficial? And I always usually say things like, it depends. Now, if I'm saying I want a leader, someone who's gonna take my team to a championship, someone's gonna be a good coach, someone's gonna be a good manager, type A is going to get the job done. They may not be the most liked. Like I said, type B are more tolerant, so they're probably more well-liked. Type A might be considered, like say, a jerk or an asshole, someone that you don't get along with, you butt heads with, they're less agreeable, but that's how it goes. To accomplish tasks, you're gonna have to bump a few heads, you're gonna be less agreeable, you're gonna have to go through things that aren't necessarily what you want to do, but the end goal is, I gotta get it, I gotta win. Now, a type A may be more prone to stress for the same reasons that makes them great, because they're going to hold themselves to a higher standard. They're going to take things more to heart if it doesn't go right. Not necessarily, like I said, to beat themselves up, but more so to say, where can I improve? That's that self-criticism. Type B, on the other hand, they're gonna be less anxious, less stressful, because whatever happens, happens. So it's not necessarily saying they don't care, it's just that, hey, next time, hey, we'll do better. Versus like, no, we gotta get this now. So if you look at, say, who do you want on your team? You wanna find a balance. Any great leader has traits on both sides, but the person who's gonna really bring it home is probably gonna be on the type A side. Now, like I said, this is not necessarily referring to an end-all be-all, because personality is pretty constant through life, so who you are is who you are, but you can work on behaviors that will be more conducive. So if you're type A and you're hyper-competitive, you can learn to dial it back when you need to. Not saying that you're gonna just be docile, but you're definitely able to shift your focus. Same thing when you say life imbalances. If you're that person who's all work, work, work because you gotta beat the clock, you can definitely take time for yourself, do things more leisurely, but that's never gonna dominate your life. You're never gonna have a multitude of days where you're not doing anything, but you can make time for it. And that's where a little more balance can come into play. But all in all, the main objective to understand these traits is, where do you fall? How can you derive what you need for the task at hand? If you're trying to get a deadline, you need to be more on this side. If you're trying to unwind and lay back, you're gonna be more on this side. But type A is gonna be the dominant personality. Like I said, no more saber-toothed tigers. If it came down to life or death 20,000 years ago, you wanted that person who can handle business regardless of what happened. So remember, guys, get your mind right, and also get your type A t-shirts from the darustrong apparel site. I'll put the link somewhere down there. Check them out, buy it, it's a great looking shirt, and get your mind right.